silent justice. The first red flag was not my son-in-law asking for help. The first red flag was the contractor standing in my driveway with a clipboard, pointing at my workshop, and calling it Phase 1. Phase 1 of what? I wondered, because I had retired to that mountain cabin to get away from phases, plans, committees, and people who used my kindness like a spare key. Welcome back to Dad's Silent Justice. Before this turns ugly, comment where you are listening from and what time it is over there, and subscribe to the channel, because sometimes a quiet dad is not weak. Sometimes he is just letting the cameras do the talking. Retirement was supposed to be simple. I had given 32 years to a regional freight company outside Atlanta, most of it on the night shift, solving problems created by people who slept through them, missing pallets, angry drivers. I had survived all of it with a legal pad, a thermos, and a patience louder men mistook for harmless. When I finally walked out for the last time, my wife Elaine and I bought a cedar cabin in Blue Ridge, Georgia. 2 bedrooms, a loft, a detached workshop, a screened porch, and enough trees around us that the nearest neighbor could sneeze, and I would not feel obligated to say bless you. Blue Ridge sits roughly 90 miles north of Atlanta, close enough for family visits, far enough that no one drops by unless they mean it. For the first 7 months, it was the kind of peace you do not tell too many people about because they might come looking for it. Elaine planted herbs in old whiskey barrels. I fixed the loose boards on the porch. We drank coffee while the fog lifted out of the hollow, and in the evenings we listened to the creek behind the house, arguing with the rocks like it had been doing since before any of us were born. Our daughter Chloe lived down near Marietta with her husband Brandon and their 5-year-old son Milo. Chloe taught kindergarten. Brandon ran a small remodeling business, which meant he knew just enough about houses to say terrifying things with confidence. He was not stupid. That was the problem. Stupid people trip over their own lies. Brandon walked his lies across the room in dress shoes and introduced them as solutions. I had never liked the way he said my friend when he was about to ask for something. He would clap a hand on my shoulder and say, "Nut, my friend, let me run an idea by you." Elaine said he was ambitious. I said ambition is fine until it starts measuring other people's walls. The request came on a Sunday in early May. Chloe and Brandon drove up after church with Milo in the back seat, already wearing the little hiking boots I had bought him. Elaine made chicken salad. I had the grill going. Milo chased a lizard along the porch steps, lost the lizard, and declared the mountain had swallowed it. It was a good afternoon, which is how these things get started. Trouble never knocks while the room already feels tense. Trouble waits until dessert. Brandon set his sweet tea down and leaned forward. He always leaned forward when he wanted the sentence to feel heavier. "Nate, my friend, we need to talk about my folks." There it was, a sentence with shoes on, walking straight across my clean floor. His parents were Glenn and Marlene Foster. Glenn had worked for years as a school bus mechanic until arthritis got into his hands and knees. Marlene had run the front desk at a dental office and treated every conversation like a patient who owed her paperwork. They had been renting a duplex in Canton. Their landlord had decided to sell, and the new rent they were being offered was, according to Brandon, insulting. I asked the natural question, "How much time do they have?" Brandon looked at Chloe, and Chloe looked down at her plate. That told me more than the answer did. "About 3 weeks," he said. "Maybe 4 if they push it." Elaine softened immediately. She has a heart that hears the word parents and starts pulling chairs to the table. "Where would they go?" she asked. "That is what we were hoping to discuss," Brandon said. "Just temporarily. Of course. 3 months. Maybe 4. They could stay here while we find them something steady. There is that guest room. And Glenn needs quiet. Marlene has been under a lot of pressure. Milo would love having both sets of grandparents nearby. He said nearby like they were moving into the county. He said temporarily like the word came with a receipt. I looked at Chloe. "Honey, is this what you want?" She took a breath. "I want everyone to be okay." "Dad," that was not an answer. That was a hostage note written by a tired daughter. Elaine touched my knee under the table. "We can think about it," she said. Brandon smiled before she finished the sentence. "Not after. Before." That smile was small, quick, and satisfied. I had seen men smile like that in conference rooms right before they presented a plan they had already sold to someone else. I did not say yes that night. I said we would talk. Brandon called twice the next day. Chloe texted 3 times. All careful and apologetic. Marlene left a voicemail so long my phone nearly filed for workers' compensation. She used the words family, dignity, and season of hardship, enough times that by minute 7 I was expecting organ music. Elaine began to bend. Not break. Bent. There is a difference. She said Glenn was hurting. Marlene was scared. And Milo would enjoy a few weeks with extra grandparents around. I listened. I nodded. I loved my wife. I also knew that kind people often confuse boundaries with cruelty because selfish people train them to. Brandon came up alone that Thursday. No clue. Men like Brandon prefer one-on-one meetings because there are fewer witnesses to the pressure. He sat at my kitchen island with both hands folded like he was about to close escrow. I sense hesitation. He said, "Sharp detective work." I said. He smiled like he had decided not to hear that. "I get it. This cabin is your sanctuary. But realistically, not. You and Elaine have more space than you use. That loft is mostly books. The guest room is empty. 9 nights out of 10. My parents are not strangers." "No," I said. "They are also not invited yet." His mouth tightened. "I thought family did not need a formal invitation. Family needs manners more than strangers do." I said, "Because family is close enough to do real damage." That was the first time I saw the polish crack. Only for a second. Then he recovered. "Look, I was not going to bring this up, but Chloe is losing sleep. When Chloe loses sleep, it affects our home. When our home is strained, Milo feels it. And I know you would never want Milo caught in adult problems." There it was. My daughter's peace and my grandson's heart, placed neatly on the table like bargaining chips. He had not raised his voice. He did not have to. Manipulation is most dangerous when it sounds concerned. I told him I would speak with Elaine. He left looking satisfied. I watched his truck roll down the gravel drive. And by the time the dust settled, I had made 2 decisions. First, I would say yes. Second, I would never again be the only person in the room keeping track of the truth. My old coworker Jenna had retired from logistics and started a security installation business with her brother. Jenna had once found a missing refrigerated trailer by noticing 1 wrong comma on a fuel receipt. She was not the woman you called for decoration. She was the woman you called when you wanted facts. I told her I needed cameras, not a spy movie. I said, just clean video. Clean audio where it is allowed. Cloud backup. Motion alert. No bedrooms. No bathrooms. Nothing creepy. Just my doors. Kitchen. Living room. Porch. Driveway. And workshop. Jenna said. "What are you expecting?" I said. "Nothing. That is why I want to be disappointed accurately." She laughed and came out 2 days later. Before anyone moved in, I also paid a local attorney for 30 minutes of advice. Because I am old enough to know that being right and being protected are cousins, not twins. We put a plain security notice by both entrances. Then I printed a simple house agreement. Every adult signed it. It said the common areas and exterior of the property used video and audio recording for security, and that no recordings would be made in sleeping areas or bathrooms. Brandon barely glanced at it. He tapped the paper with the pen and said, "Very official." I said, "That is the goal." He signed. Marlene signed with a little sigh. Like the Constitution had personally inconvenienced her. Glenn read the whole thing, then signed slowly. They arrived the last Friday of May. Glenn thanked me twice before carrying in a single suitcase. Marlene entered with 3 rolling bags, 2 plastic tubs, and the expression of a woman touring a hotel she planned to rate harshly. "Oh," she said, looking around the living room. "Rustic." The way she said rustic made the word sound unfinished. By the second morning, Marlene had moved my coffee mugs. Not 1 shelf over. Not a little adjustment. She had reorganized the entire kitchen, according to a system only she understood. My mug, the chipped blue one Chloe gave me when she was 12, had been placed on the highest shelf above the refrigerator. I am 6 feet tall and still needed a step stool. Marlene. I said, "Where are the coffee mugs?" She smiled brightly. I made the kitchen more efficient. For whom, I asked. For everyone, she said. Glenn coughed into his fist. I liked Glenn more every day. The first week was small things. A throw blanket vanished from my chair and reappeared in the guest room. The thermostat, which Elaine and I kept at 72, began waking up at 68 like it had developed opinions. Marlene added lavender plugins to the living room until the cabin smelled like a candle store had lost a fight. She called my workshop that shed, which bothered me more than it should have. On day 9, my phone buzzed while I was in town buying deck screws. Motion alert. Kitchen. I opened the app expecting a raccoon. Because mountain living makes you optimistic in strange ways. Instead, I saw Marlene standing at the counter on the phone, speaking softly. Softly, in my experience, usually means honestly. I am telling you, Brandon. It is bigger than the photos. Made it look. The workshop could be converted if he would stop pretending he still needs it. Elaine is the key. She is sentimental. Work on her. Once they get used to us here, moving us out will feel cruel. Nobody wants to be cruel. I stood in aisle 7 of the hardware store with a box of screws in my hand and felt my whole body go calm. Not angry. Calm. Anger makes you rush. Calm lets you save the file. Marlene continued. Glenn thinks this is temporary. But Glenn has no vision. Your father needs stability. I need a place where I am not treated like a burden. And honestly, Brandon, your business could use that workshop for storage until things settle. It is wasted on him. Wasted on him. I looked down at the deck screws. A man can build a life for 32 years. Retire to a place he paid for. And still, there will be somebody standing in his kitchen calling his piece unused space. I saved the clip. Then I bought the screws. A new hasp block for the workshop. And a pack of labels because I was feeling petty in a practical way. I told Jenna what I had. She said, back it up twice. I said, already done. She said, good. Let them talk. So I did. I let them talk for 3 more weeks. The pattern revealed itself like a stain under heat. Brandon visited every few days and always found a reason to walk outside with Marlene. The porch camera heard them clearly. Marlene believed the cabin would become a multi-generational arrangement. Brandon believed Elaine would cave if Chloe cried hard enough. Glenn believed they were leaving by Labor Day. Chloe, I realized with a cold kind of relief, did not seem to know there was any permanent plan at all. One afternoon, Brandon told Marlene, we do not need Nate to love the idea. We just need him to get tired of fighting it. That line stayed with me. People like that do not always try to win you over. Sometimes they just try to wear you down until surrender looks like peace. Glenn came to me on the porch near the end of June. He moved slowly because his knees were bad. And he lowered himself into the chair with the care of a man negotiating with every joint. We sat for a while watching a storm gather over the ridge. I need to say something, he said. I appreciate the room. I do. But this feels off. What part? I asked. He rubbed his thumb along the arm of the chair. Marlene keeps talking like we are settling. Not staying. There is a difference. But she uses the words the same. What did Brandon tell you? I asked. He looked embarrassed. That you and Elaine had offered to keep us as long as needed. That maybe there were bigger plans later if everyone got comfortable. I nodded. We offered 3 or 4 months. Nothing bigger. Glenn closed his eyes. I thought so. That was all he said. But his face changed. Not shocked. Worse. Confirmed. There is a tiredness that comes when you realize the person embarrassing you is your own family and you have been defending them out of habit. The breaking point came on a Wednesday morning. Elaine and I were at the farmer's market in Ellijay buying peaches. My phone buzzed. Motion alert. Driveway. Then workshop. Then porch. That many alerts mean either a bear, a delivery truck, or a bad idea arriving in Boots. I opened the app. Brandon's truck was in my driveway. Marlene stood beside it wearing sunglasses and the kind of smile people wear when they think the owner is not home. A man I did not know was stepping out with a clipboard. Behind them was Chloe, holding Milo's hand and looking confused. The man pointed at my workshop. Brandon said, if we run plumbing along this side, We can make it a studio apartment. Nothing crazy. Bedroom, bath, kitchenette. Phase 1. Later. If Nate gets on board, the porch can tie into the main house. Phase 1. Chloe said, "Wait. I thought you said you were just checking whether the roof needed work." Brandon turned to her with that patient husband face I had come to dislike. "We are checking options. That is all. Your parents need to see possibilities," Marlene said. "Honey, do not make this negative. This could help everyone." Milo asked if the man was building him a treehouse. Nobody answered him. That part bothered me most. Elaine was beside me at the peach stand. She saw my face and lowered the bag she was holding. "Nate, we need to go home," I said. I did not speed. That is important. A younger version of me would have taken those curves like a man trying to catch fire. Older men know rage is more useful when it arrives rested. When we pulled into the driveway, the contractor was measuring the side wall of my workshop. Brandon turned. And for one beautiful second, he looked exactly like what he was. A man caught doing something he had not yet rehearsed, explaining. "Nate," he said. "Hey, we were just measuring my property without permission," I said. He glanced at the contractor. The contractor suddenly found his clipboard fascinating. Marlene stepped in. "We were only gathering information. You have been so tense about everything. And sometimes practical people need practical numbers." I smiled. Elaine told me later, that was when she got scared. Not for me. For them. Everybody inside. I said. We sat in the living room. Brandon took the chair closest to the door. Marlene sat upright like she was waiting for a photographer. Chloe stood by the window, arms folded, already pale. Glenn came in from the guest room, saw everyone, and muttered, "Lord." Finally, I placed my phone on the coffee table. "Before we begin," I said, "I want to remind everyone of the house security notice you signed when you moved in." Marlene's face changed. Brandon's changed more. "You recorded us," he asked. "I documented my home." I said, "The same home your mother called wasted on me. The same workshop you just invited a contractor to measure. The same property you have been discussing as if I were a stubborn tenant instead of the owner." Then I played the first clip. Marlene in my kitchen. Telling Brandon to work on Elaine and wait until moving them out felt cruel. The room went so quiet I could hear the refrigerator hum. Chloe looked at her husband. "What is she talking about?" Brandon said. Mom was emotional. I played the second clip. Brandon on the porch saying they did not need me to love the idea. They just needed me to get tired of fighting it. Chloe put one hand over her mouth. I played the third clip from that morning. Phase 1. Studio apartment. Later. The porch can tie into the main house. When it ended, nobody moved. Chloe said, "Brandon, you told me Dad had already offered the workshop." He rubbed his forehead. I said he might be open to it. "No," she said. "You told me he offered." That was when the room turned. Not because I won. I had not won anything. The room turned because Chloe heard the difference between a misunderstanding and a strategy. Marlene tried to rescue him. "Chloe, sweetheart, marriage requires teamwork." Chloe looked at her. "Do not. Just do not." I kept my voice even. "Glenn and Marlene, you have 2 weeks to find another place. I will help Glenn carry boxes. I will not help anyone rewrite what happened here. Brandon, you will return every key to this property before you leave today. If you have copies, you will say so now." He stared at me. "You are making this ugly." "No," I said. "I am making it accurate." Ugly was already here. Elaine had been silent the whole time. Then she stood. "Marlene," she said, "you told your son I was the key because I was sentimental. Let me clear that up. My sentiment is for my husband, my daughter, my grandson, and the home we built. It is not for people who sit at my table and plan around me." I had never heard that exact tone before. Marlene heard it once and looked smaller. The next 2 weeks were not peaceful, but they were productive. Brandon tried the apology that is really a weather report. "I am sorry things got heated." He tried the apology that wears a costume. "I am sorry you feel blindsided." He tried the family speech. If we cannot support each other, what do we even have? I told him. Evidence. That ended the speech. Marlene packed loudly. I did not know a person could close drawers with an accent. But she managed. Glenn packed quietly. On the third day, he found me in the workshop and ran his hand over the workbench I had built from reclaimed oak. This is a good room, he said. It is. I should have stopped her earlier. Probably, I said. Then because he looked like he deserved mercy, and because I am not a monster, I added, but it is hard to stand up inside your own marriage when you are tired. He nodded. That is true. Not an excuse. But true. Chloe came up alone on day 7. She and Elaine walked down to the creek first. Then she came to the workshop, where I was pretending to organize screws, because pretending to do something useful is how fathers survive hard conversations. Dad, she said, did you think I was part of it? No. You answered too fast. Because I had thought about it slowly. Her eyes filled. He told me you liked the idea but did not want to admit it. He said Mom was excited. He said you were just being proud. I set the screw box down. Honey, pride is when a man refuses help he needs. Boundaries are when a man refuses a plan he never agreed to. She cried then. Not loudly. Chloe never cried loudly. She cried like she was trying not to disturb anyone with her own heartbreak. I hugged her and looked over her shoulder at the workshop wall Brandon had planned to cut open. I wanted to hate him for what he did to me. It was easier to hate him for what he did to her. Moving day was a Friday. A humid Georgia morning. The kind where the air feels like it has hands. Glenn shook my hand by the truck. His grip was weaker than it wanted to be. I found a senior apartment in Jasper. He said, smaller than Marlene wants. Exactly as temporary as the lease says. Good. Marlene walked past me with her purse tight under her arm. She did not apologize. Some people would rather carry shame forever than set it down in front of the person who saw it clearly. That was her luggage to manage. Brandon came last. He placed 2 keys on the porch rail. These are all of them. I said nothing. He sighed. Nate. I hope you understand I was trying to solve a family problem. You created one. I said. He looked toward Chloe, who was strapping Milo into the car seat. Then he lowered his voice. You do not want to push too hard. Chloe and I have to live together after this. There it was again. A smaller version of the same lever. My daughter. My grandson. His favorite handles. I stepped closer. Brandon. Listen carefully. You used my daughter's exhaustion to pressure me. You lied to your own wife about my consent. You helped your mother plan a permanent expansion on property you do not own. You brought a contractor here without permission. Every important word of it is saved in 3 places. If you ever use Chloe or Milo as leverage with me again, I will not argue. I will simply make sure everyone who needs the truth has it. For the first time since I had known him, he had no sentence ready. We clear, I asked. He nodded once. Drive safe. I said. They were gone by noon. Elaine and I stood on the porch after the last truck disappeared between the trees. For a while neither of us said anything. The cabin had that after-storm silence, when every branch is still dripping, but the sky has already decided to move on. Elaine handed me coffee. The good beans. You knew, she said. I suspected. You were patient. I was angry. I said, I just gave the anger a job. She laughed then. A real laugh. The kind I had missed during those crowded weeks when our own house felt like it was holding its breath. 2 months later, Chloe and Brandon started counseling. 3 months after that, Chloe moved with Milo into a little rental in Woodstock, close enough for school, and far enough that Brandon had to knock. I did not celebrate. I need that understood. A family cracking open is not a football game. There is no end zone dance. My daughter had pain in her face I could not fix, and my grandson asked questions no 5-year-old should have to organize. But one Saturday in October, Chloe brought Milo up to the cabin. The leaves were turning copper and red. Elaine made chili. Milo ran around the yard with a stick he claimed was a dragon sword. Chloe sat beside me on the porch and looked at the workshop. Dad, she said, how did you know to protect yourself? I thought about Brandon's smile before Elaine finished speaking. I thought about the way he said temporary. The way Marlene looked at our cabin, like a room she had already decorated in her mind. The way people reveal themselves in small moments long, before they do anything big enough to accuse. I said, I paid attention. That is all, that is most of it. I said, the rest was cameras. She laughed, then leaned her head on my shoulder the way she used to when she was little and pretending not to be sleepy. Milo ran onto the porch and shouted that the dragon had been defeated. But the creek was probably full of spies. I told him every good creek has spies. He asked if he could sleep in the loft. Elaine said yes before he finished asking. I smiled after she finished, because in a good house, yes, still belongs to the people who live there. The workshop is still a workshop. The porch is still attached only to the house it was built for. My blue mug is back on the second shelf where a civilized man can reach it. The thermostat minds its business. Sometimes Glenn calls Chloe. Sometimes he sends Milo postcards with old buses on them. I do not know what Marlene thinks of me. And I have discovered that not knowing is one of retirement's underrated luxuries. What I do know is this. Some people see a quiet father, an aging husband, a man who worked too long and finally stepped back, and they mistake peace for vacancy. They see an empty guest room and call it opportunity. They see a workshop and call it potential. They see a kind wife and call her the key. They see a daughter's stress and call it leverage. They are wrong. A quiet man is not always waiting to be convinced. Sometimes he is waiting for you to tell the truth when you think nobody can hear you. Sometimes he has already read the document, checked the lock, backed up the file, and decided exactly how much rope to let you carry. Retirement is still a reward. You just have to guard the gate. You have to know the difference between helping family and surrendering your life to people who brought luggage and a plan. The cabin is quiet again. Last night, Elaine and I ate dinner on the screen porch while the creek talked in the dark, and Milo fell asleep in the loft with a flashlight still on his chest. Nobody measured my workshop. Nobody called my piece unused space. And for the first time in months, the only thing moving on the driveway camera was a deer who had more manners than half the people I know. If this story kept you listening, hit like and subscribe to Dad's Silent Justice for more real, rough, family-centered stories, and tell me in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it there right now?